And we're back.
And we're back. And we're back. Trying some new lighting today, so got some not quite right, but what a great week we've had. Great week of
Yeah.
sci-fi TV.
Yeah, a
We're here
lot.
today to talk about Silo season 2, episode 4, and also
Skeleton
Skeleton
Crew,
Crew, first
which released
episode,
early.
which released early.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, All right. So
So
what
Silo,
do you want to do?
should we start? Let's start.
Sure.
Silo.
Let's dive
So
into Silo.
Silo, wowee. What an episode.
Yeah. I
Like,
I I
good.
no, I would say I thought it was great. The the reason that I loved it is because I felt like we got to like peel back 3 layers instead of just one this time. You know what I mean?
Mm.
I loved it.
And tell me, what layers would you say were peeled back?
What layers were peeled back? Um, let's see. We may have to come back to this question because
Yeah, you know what? I think
what
I may know a layer two you're thinking of. I'd say the world has had a layer peeled back, because there was a lot of talk in this episode about the outside world, a lot of
right.
it. Like there was talk about the
Yeah,
circus and elephants, and and
right.
um and talk about the sun and its orbit, and Earth orbiting around the sun, and like the stars out there, and all that. We also learned a bit about the mines. We haven't really heard much about the mines, but like the fact that she said, like, when uh the mayor, I think, or IT head said, like, hey, why'd you reduce his sentence to 5 years? She said, do you think he'll last longer than 1 year in the mines?
Hmm.
So world building there, and then, uh, gosh, we're jumping all around for this, but at the end when he poisons her, which I kind of expected to happen because like, personally, the fact that he saw the outside, I think really like nails down to him that he can't let anyone out, that he has to do everything he can to make sure that the silo does not fail. Um, but like the fact that when he poisoned her, and like it's interesting to see that she was obviously angry about being poisoned, but she didn't seem angry almost at him. She was just like sad that she was dying, and then
Hmm.
he gave her the VR headset, and like showing her the world, like showing her a nature preserve of, like, look, the monkeys and the birds,
In
and
Costa Rica. Yeah, yeah. It's actually, what's interesting is I think you're right in the sense that I felt like 3 layers were pulled back. It wasn't so much that 3 layers were, that our questions were answered.
Hmm.
It's that it's that both some of their questions started to get answered, right? That she got to see a monkey in Costa Rica or whatever it was.
Right,
She got to see these like the wonder, like they've been kept in a container their whole life, and they don't even realize, they haven't been allowed to understand what the world used to be like or what exists or could exist
right,
out there. And they started, she started to see pieces of that. The elephant, like little tiny bits, and it's like their reaction to what, to the world or what it is or what it used to be or whatever,
right.
that learning. And hold on, and um but also uh that uh also there was peelbacks a bit on the history of the silo, right? They kept talking about, like, there was a rebellion, no one knows why we're here, blah blah blah. I think the fact of the matter is maybe some people do know why I mean, you know what I mean? Maybe they don't, right? Like the
Right.
the the IT guy, but the bottom line is there's a whole bunch of history and information that clearly has been withheld, which
Hmm.
is kind of weird. It's still like it's still toxic outside. Like maybe there's still good reasons to stay inside, but
Yeah,
yet they still kept all this information from them?
right. It's interesting. Here's some ideas. Them keeping knowledge from these people could be a way of, like, for example, no one in the silo knows about elephants except the heads of IT. No one knows what birds are. No one knows what's, the sun and the stars are, None of them know that. Um, Maybe it's a way because they know that the people inside are most likely never going to be able to see the outside. And so telling someone something of something they'll never see ever would make them probably not want to stay in the silo.
I guess yeah. I mean, that's that. This is some of the question, right? Like why?
Right.
But it's just so interesting to see them uh to do that.
Right.
I think I think the most powerful thing about this episode for me, for sure,
Mhm.
was the um
Sun?
astronomy or whatever
Right, yeah.
the right scientific word for it is that you sort of touched on before. That really blew me away, right? Because um uh and I wanted to research all these people, but for the longest time, the church, right? The Catholic Church in the 15, 16, 1700s or whatever it was, and before that, but all different kinds of people controlled information about the sun and the stars and the moon and and all of that
Mhm.
sort of stuff. And um and like there's a European that's credited with discovering that the um uh that the earth rotates around the sun, and that was like heresy to talk about it, right? Although there were uh Islamic scholars and maybe even Greek or other scholars that had sort of figured out the mathematics about it, right? And so to me that's a really powerful allusion to these other times in history where people tried to control the flow of information because it would upset like the world order, kind of,
Right.
right? And so
Right.
that to me was so powerful because it's such a critical importance, the
Mhm.
science and understanding the math and where we are and all that stuff. So to me that was a huge, such an important moment that alludes to the kind of politics that this
Right.
story might be trying to talk about in terms of
Mhm.
human information and controlling and society and all that stuff, like a
Right.
bigger thing. And sorry, one more. The other thing that I thought was so powerful was that the you know mechanics and is that what they're called, mechanics in the um,
Down mechanical or like, yeah, I think,
mechanical,
yeah, down like the
yeah,
mechanics. Yeah.
mechanical, and just that the lore and the history and everything about them came out a bit more, and then like when he looked at the graffiti, he was deciphering. It's like
Right.
you're reading about, it's like archaeology, right? You're reading about this history and what went on and stuff, and it was like they always blame it on mechanical,
Mechanical. Right.
right? And that mechanical has this power, and that in a way, mechanical represents like quote unquote labor, like
Mhm.
like all of these people, like historically, if like the labor unions started striking, then they could control things, so people,
Mhm.
the management and the companies fight them and all. So there's all this kind of like politics, which was sort of there before. There was
Right.
clearly levels and things, but I don't know, just that stuff really came out in this episode for me.
Yeah, yeah. When you think about like medieval society, there be the kings and the churches at the top. the warriors, and then like the laborers making up,
Yeah.
the people who are suffered the most. But if every laborer stopped working or revolted against, the kingdom would collapse because for every knight, there's like 10 peasants. And all it takes is like one peasant with a knife to kill the knight. And like
Yeah.
mechanical is basically the peasants. Or like they hold all the power. They hold the knife to the throat of the silo because at any moment
Hmm.
they could destroy the power generator and then everyone would have to go outside.
Exactly.
And like them saying like always blame mechanical is because they know that like okay, if we strike fast and hard and tactically enough and blame everything on mechanical, we can take out the heads of the mechanical and then everything can go back to the way it was. And like the idea of like, every time something big happens, blame it on mechanical, blame it on mechanical. It's it's an interesting idea that like this is most likely happened a lot more, many more times maybe, and the history of that has been forgotten because they erase it. Or like Freedom Day. I don't remember if the Freedom Day was because of mechanical, like the people try to rebel, or maybe it was the whole like different people from different levels of silo, but most likely it was mechanical. And so people mechanical are like the fire starters, but in actuality, it's not really them starting the fires. Like in this episode, we saw the judge was poisoned by the head of IT and had
Right.
like the head like the security guy put a knife in her, and they allowed the plans of the judge of like the idea of like, oh, she wants to work with the mechanical, she wants to work with the people below us, how nice, how kind of her, and then turning it around so that, oh my god, mechanical just killed the judge, the kind-hearted person who wanted to help the people
Right.
mechanical, they're savages. And now
Well, it's just
like the fact that like they turned they with but like two balls, literally like colored balls, were able to turn off the power, scaring everyone, and then having it meaning that everyone's scared of that power, and then having a beloved community member supposedly stabbed by them. That everyone's gonna turn against those in mechanical.
yeah, and I think in a lot of ways that kind of politics, like the book Animal Farm or whatever, where the politics was played out through animals and the way that they were, the roles that they played and all that sort of stuff. Uh, I don't know, just like the kind of the politics and the like it really hit home in this episode, the way the silo was constructed and run and organized and
Mhm.
managed, like behind the scenes and all that stuff, sort of the politics, of it all, like, I don't know, there's just, to me there was just like so much human history, politics of human
Right,
history, from the, again, the Copernicus, getting in trouble from the church or whatever,
right,
because he talked about the way the planets actually move and,
right,
all that, sort of stuff.
right. And like maybe not too massive mind-boggling stuff happened in this episode, but that's okay because this show has taught us that what, it's okay if not the biggest thing happens. We're gonna have a small reveal here and there. We're gonna have interesting character developments, like for
Yeah.
example
I mean,
Solo and Juliet, like she's still trying to find a way to get back. And this episode also really showed off once again her ability to problem solve.
well,
And it's in
to be an engineer, and also kind of
right,
his way, even though he's a bit
right,
wacky, that he showed her the bellows in the organ
right.
and all that stuff.
And also it's
No, I
interesting to
mean,
see how long he's maybe been there because
right. Well, she was, it's like everyone there is scared of history, sort of, right? Like
right,
that's when I said there was like multiple layers, like we maybe our questions weren't answered, but but some of our questions were answered, right? Some of our
Right.
questions were answered in the sense that there have been multiple rebellions, right? There
Right.
wasn't a rebellion, there was multiple rebellions. That was talked
Hmm.
about, right? And shown on the walls that this stuff has happened. Again, it alludes to human civilization, that there have been multiple
Right.
civilizations and things like that, and so it was all about it, the people there starting to learn their history. And it's so interesting that they suppress the history. Again, there is this real danger out there, clearly,
Definitely.
but that
Yeah.
they in order to control society, they suppress or control history or
Right.
something.
It's interesting to make me think of like I don't know, maybe it was like Plato or saying like, humans are like looking at a cave wall and like, people behind them are like playing shadows and telling them this is the world. But in actuality, looking outside is the truth of the beautiful wide world. And that's kind of what's happening to Silo. They're being lied to. But the thing is that outside of the silo, it's not safe. It really isn't.
I,
Like we
yeah,
saw the dangers, and like it's interesting because maybe it's the fact that the head of IT doesn't know what would fully happen if he told people the truth, not like lied to them, but said outside is dangerous. Because all he knows is the book, and the book works. The book has been able to keep the silo running for who knows how
right.
many
Well, that's the thing. We just
centuries.
don't. Right. That's the thing, is you really don't know, right? They talk about 150 years or whatever, but it sounds like it could be a lot longer potentially,
Right.
right?
We don't know if every time a rebellion happened, so like
The
quote
clock
unquote book,
resets. Yeah.
yeah, we don't know if like I don't know, every 150 years there's another rebellion. And like
Right.
if
But it
so,
was alluded to that, right? That there's
yeah,
been multiple rebellions, and
right.
like, and maybe there's a rebellion in everyone's lifetime. You know what I mean? People just don't.
Yeah. And it's so once again, the Salo's
Yeah.
able to make everything
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. No, I think it's, again, I like the fact that we're learning about we're learning bits and pieces of
Mhm.
the history, even if, like, we learned a lot about the inside this time, about the history of
Yeah.
the silo and how they deal with things and stuff. Not so much, like, you can think about what's out in the world and how are we going to fix it, and where are, who's everyone else and stuff. There was a lot of like learning about, like, internally how that works, and
Hmm.
just that idea that there wasn't a single rebellion, and that
Yeah.
there's clearly two whole, certain people know all that stuff, right, about
Hmm.
uh what the world used to look like and the wonders of the
Yeah.
world and all that, and
And
anyways.
it's amazing. It's a
Yeah,
we can
it's good.
see
I
we can see the effects of what a failed rebellion is in, our current cell, and we can also see the effects of a successful rebellion in the other one. And like Juliet's got a lot to think about.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I
Yeah.
really, I thought this was a great. I really
Yeah.
enjoyed this episode, and again, I'm still. It's so, you know, you've got all this stuff. You got the human stories about what's going to happen in this silo, right?
Mhm.
But you've also got, like, what about all the other silos and all the rest of the world,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah,
you could go on.
we have no idea what's life like in other silos or that massive city. Heck, it's made me think
Yeah,
of the possibility of what if the silos are a silo in itself? Like we
yeah.
can't see over the hills, just like in the silo. Like it's almost
Right.
like a meta inside of a meta of like
And,
them being
to tell you the truth, like, I had this flash in watching it, and I wondered if almost that, like, people were like imprisoned in the silos, sentenced
right,
to the silos
right.
in the beginning. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the original people, it was like a jail or something.
Mm. Or heck, maybe it's all of a simulation to prepare humans for life on Mars or something.
Maybe it is Mars, right? Who knows?
Maybe it is. Maybe.
Well, it's not
A
Mars
colon
as we know it, but
right, maybe
yeah,
it's a colonized Mars far in the future where like the
who,
redness of it
yeah,
is who knows? I love
who
this
knows? Who
series.
knows? It's
You
wait,
can't.
wait. We've only got a few days until episode. Well, we got a few days until the next episode, but yeah, no,
Yeah.
that was a good one. All right. Well, looking forward to it.
Yeah, very excited.
Okay,
Now
and yeah, let's
let's talk.
skip.
Do we have enough time? Do we have enough time
Yeah,
to
yeah, I think so. What do we got? We'll keep it short.
All right. Skeleton Crew. I like it. It's an interesting show. Like, okay, I'm gonna the critique I have for the show. The show seems to be trying to sell itself as a kind of kids show. Technically it's an all, you know, everyone show, but it seems to be trying to sell itself as a kids show. The issue I have with that is that in literally the first few minutes of the episode, pirates were invading and a guy's gonna be jettisoned into the vacuum of space. Like we saw a guy's like an alien's eye get blasted and like
Right.
it turn around and kill like
So it's
cool.
a little bit. So if you're making, yeah. So I would say the plus and minus. I somehow managed to corral your mom and your brother's still, not yet a teen, but
Right.
pretty teenish, and he thought it was a bit too young for him, right? Like I watching it,
Yeah.
I could just tell that he was beyond this, like, um whatever, 8-year old kids go into
Mhm.
the adventure in the junkyard or whatever,
Yeah.
right? um which is a good genre, right?
Yeah,
It's a
no,
good
it's a great
genre, but
genre. It's a great genre.
it's not, if you're 12, 13, 14, that's
Yeah.
not what you're looking for. But as you said, there was the beginning of it was like, maybe a little bit violent.
Yeah.
um you know so
It reminded me
I
of like
got
what actual like real life pirate invasions were like. It's not like the haha Captain Jack Sparrow funny stuff. It's like, oh, this guy's gonna get thrown into the vacuum of space. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that it was interesting because that you sort of forget that
Yeah.
when it comes to the all the other kid stuff, digging in the, like digging in
The dirt.
the dirt in the woods and all that stuff.
Yeah.
um so
Yeah,
you
let's
know
move now from there. Let's talk about the rest of the episode. It's really interesting. I don't think we've ever seen, honestly, you know what? The tone of this show is very different. Like
it's super different, right?
yeah,
Like it's a lot, like, I don't know, it's a whole bunch of it's a whole bunch of things. Like I'm gonna keep watching.
yeah.
I it didn't it again, for me, the issue is I think it, like, in a way, I feel like it would have been better if, like, it's almost like they're trying to meld today with Star Wars, right? They're trying to
Mm,
bridge and I think it almost would have been better if the kids were like walking down the street and they, like, were had just come out of a movie and were fighting with pretend lightsabers, and then somehow there was like a space-time vortex that sucked them into the Star Wars
right.
world, right?
Yeah.
And I think
Um,
that might have been a better, like, thing somehow. Pirates,
yeah.
I don't know, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Because,
Like the Goonies
like,
or something kind of almost.
right,
Like
again, that to me, because the suburban planet world, for me, people had fun, but I don't know, whoever designed that world, like, really was like, I don't
let's
know.
take
You know what I mean?
Toronto.
Like,
Let's actually take Toronto,
not
including the
even
CN
Toronto. No,
Tower.
it's
No,
not. No, it's
including
not
this.
even Toronto. It's like, I don't know. It's you know what I mean? Again, it's like suburban California in the 1980s or something like that.
Right.
And like, all the it's the future. You've got these flying,
Right.
every kid's got a flying bike. why don't they just fricking ride those to school? Like, who's going to get on a bus if you can ride a flying bike to school, right?
Yeah,
Number
it's
one.
the
Number
yeah.
two, why are there cars on a streetcar track? Like, I'm all for the transit, but like anyways, I'm not going to go into it. But
Yeah.
that stuff to me was a little bit like, if you're trying to make it goofy and funny, no problem.
Hmm.
But if you're trying to like envelop us, like, I get it. When we go to Star Wars, we've got to believe in anti-gravity and
Yeah.
warp speed and all that stuff. I get it, but we get caught up in it and we believe it, right?
Right.
This is kind of like, uh, in this world, all the bicycles have, square wheels, but everything else is normal,
Yeah, like it's kind of like it's interesting. It's kind of like they took the idea of fantasizing. Do you remember? Okay, a callback to a book, a Dr. Seuss book of like I think it was like a kid is walking down like Mulberry Street and he's imagining all the crazy
Right.
stuff happening, but
Yeah,
it doesn't
yeah,
actually happen. And this is kind of like that idea of like, it's almost like someone's daydreaming their normal life, but with a twist
right.
of it's in Star Wars.
You're right. That's a great analogy, I think, but because it is like, it wasn't just a horse and a cart, there was an elephant and
A blue
uh
elephant
yeah,
and
right,
anti-gravity
right,
jingle and cheese. It's
yeah.
it's weird. It does we've never this
Like, we always
we
see like villages and cities. Now we have the
right.
suburbs.
Yeah, we see like rundown shantytown villages and then uber high
Or
tech.
farming villages
Right,
or
yeah,
like
like
little,
but we don't see the mid we don't see suburban stuff. We don't see
yeah,
like, people getting on a bus.
right.
Unless it's a train, which is,
Yeah, which
sci-fi.
they sort of had, they had trams and things like that. Again, I don't want to get stuck. I'm
Yeah.
I'm a transportation guy. I don't want to get stuck on that. But I just,
Yeah.
to me, that's
It's
like, you either take us fully in the future or you have things that are pretty believable. You know.
yeah, like
Anyways, like, I'm all
okay.
right with a flying
Yeah.
bike, right? I'm totally
Yeah.
all right with a flying bike for the most part.
Yeah.
but
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 it's
but not a
strange.
car that's on a streetcar track.
Yeah.
You know what I
All right.
mean? That
All right.
doesn't make
Yeah.
sense.
Now, let's talk about the other parts of the episode. It's
Yeah.
okay, as someone who's watched the two episodes, things change in the second episode, okay? So
Okay.
but it's in I wouldn't say this is not silo level of like questions like, wait, why is this like that? But it's interesting. Like, for example, like robots. The main kid, I'm forgetting his name. The main
Right.
kid wants to be a Jedi, He wants to
Yeah.
be a
Yeah.
cool like
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah.
But the thing is that like the when he says that he doesn't say he wants to be a Jedi, but when he says he wants to be a person who helps people, the robot teacher says, you don't need to do that. You should,
Right.
think about actual stuff.
Robots can help
All
you.
the yeah,
Yeah.
the robots are there
Do
to
that
take
stuff.
care of the menial stuff, teaching you stuff.
Right.
And that's
Yeah. Well, he
interesting.
didn't. The robot thought what he was referring to was robot stuff, but his
Right.
friend knew he was saying he wanted to be a Jedi and like
Yeah.
save people from intergalactic pirates or whatever.
And
Right.
it's interesting because in the episode it talks about how like or kind of hints at that like they can't really leave the planet. They're kind of stuck because like they say about like,
Oh,
there's a
there's
shield
pirates. I
around
mean,
the planet.
right. Right.
And it's
Yeah.
interesting to
Yeah.
think like, this is strange. Why is that? Like, is that why everyone has to have a job? That's why everyone has to, all the kids have to get a good score on the test to see what they're going to become because the society they're in is like highly like, I don't know, like utilitarian where like everyone has a purpose. Is that the right? Anyway, like
Yeah, I mean, it's structured, right? Like,
yeah, it's
again, it's in a way, it's got a happy sheen on it, but there's
right.
there's there's like um dystopian, utopian, you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah, like I don't
it's
think we
not,
saw
there's it's
and
a fine line.
yeah, we didn't see anyone like we didn't see any homeless people, but like there's also weird like this is weird. It's like eating a fruit that you've never tried before and you're like, huh. You're going through the
Right.
emotions. Like, it's a
You're still not,
modern
yeah. I
it's
would say so. I gotta eat a few more episodes before I'm convinced. Like I will watch it for the joy. I think
Mhm.
had Noah been 4 or 5 years younger, this might have been a way for him to get
Into stuff,
into
maybe.
things, although kids nowadays have so much action and, manga, cartoon, animation, so much going on that the story's got to move pretty quick for kids, right? So
I
we'll see
mean,
whether this sticks,
well, yeah, it's all of that plus like TikTok brain of I don't think you're gonna know this
Yeah.
term, but brain rot of like
Mm.
lower attention
Oh, I
spans.
know. I know that.
You do. Yeah.
Of course I
Uh
do. Yeah.
but yeah,
But yeah.
this series I could see it going places. I could see this.
You know what? They're shooting for a certain age group, and I don't, the thing about Star Wars in general is that it tends to capture a broad age group, right?
Right,
And
yeah.
I don't think this really, again, I haven't seen episode two. I'll take a look, but I'm just not sure that you know, again, we'll see
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
happens. It might get
You don't
acolyted, but
Oh, it does. Hopefully, it does. I would hope that everyone at Disney is like has a poster of the acolyte. Like, do
right,
bet. Like acolyte is watching you. You don't want to end up like them. Or like maybe they have the producer just like in those like stockades. Like, don't end
right.
up like them.
Yeah,
Like
I'm sure they do.
episode two's. I Yeah, you're saying you're not the biggest fan of it. I kind of like it.
No,
Time will
you know what?
tell.
I like watching. I'm curious. Like I would watch the season two of The Acolyte, right? Even though
Yeah,
it, it had its questionable, you know,
yeah,
uh, decision, production, whatever it is, plot decisions made.
yeah,
I would definitely, like I'm going to watch this and I'm curious. It's fun, but
yeah.
I've had kids. My kids were recently the right age for it. I see these kinds of
Mhm.
shows. My kids have outgrown
Yeah.
the exact age, right? I have a whole list of things that I've watched through my life. And it's like, oh, I'd love my kids to watch this at this age because if it grabs you, it's
Mhm.
so great, right? But I just
Yeah.
again, I
We're
was 10 when the first
Yeah,
sword came out, and that is that is a good age
yeah,
to get captivated by one.
yeah,
We'll see where this
yeah,
goes. Again,
yeah.
you know, it's
I
a little apple dumpling gang to me, so
don't know what it is, but let me. I think this series could go places. I'm
yeah.
sure it's gonna. And all right,
Well,
and the
now that they're in
last,
a
yeah.
spaceship, clearly it
Yeah.
could.
Oh, it does. It gets interesting. It gets interesting.
Okay. So well,
All right.
let's
With our last 3 minutes,
yeah.
in 3 days, Secret Levels, half of the series gets released.
Oh my gosh, we got a busy December,
Yeah.
eh?
All right. I cannot wait. All right.
Mm,
It's
yeah. Yeah,
it's
thanks for
been lovely.
watching.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks for
thanks for watching.
watching,
And
and
keep those questions coming and keep subscribing.
keep subscribing. Until we see you again.
Till we see you again.